So here's a tale of two companies that we started marketing for. One came to us with a terrible brand and had exponential growth. The other came to us with an awesome brand that was done professionally, and they are not plateauing, but it is a much, much slower growth pattern in their company. And I think it's really important that we talk about why this is, so you can understand some of the fundamentals of marketing and what you can expect when you start running ads and how they work inside of a market. I am Tyler Williams and I run Mammoth Marketing. We're a marketing agency that helps plumbers. And so this is a little bit behind the curtain. This is a little bit like behind the scenes of some of the stuff that we find and we end up dealing with. So I've got my marker board and we'll just dive right in. So like I said, we have two companies. So we have company A and then we've got company B. And they saw very, very different results. Company A came to us with a terrible brand and company B came to us with an awesome brand. So what is the difference between these two companies? Well, just to let you know, like they are similar strategies, similar markets. And what we ended up doing was launching like Meta and Facebook ads, working on new websites, building out their presence, working on their Google business listing, all those kinds of things that you would expect of a marketing agency. The thing that we do is we often compare, like, okay, well, this client had this and this client had this, and this one worked and over here and it didn't over here. We need to figure out what could the causes of that be. And so in this case, the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because we often have clients who compare themselves to a friend or a colleague that they've been talking to, and they don't really know the points of comparison when it comes especially to the marketing parts. Parts of your business, yeah, you can compare. And I think it's important to go and talk to people and figure out what they're doing, because otherwise you don't even know what to try. But in this case, one of the biggest differentiators between the two companies is brand A, with the terrible branding, had been in business for 15 years, okay? And brand B had been in business for 2. And that is a massive difference in how many people would know of this company. Brand A, with the terrible logo, had 15 years of having the terrible logo. And brand B had 2 years, well, probably even less, maybe like a year and a half, of people seeing the good logo. Now, some companies at 2-year mark, like they're doing good, like they've fueled their growth, things like that. But in this case, they were both at about the same point after, after 2 years for these guys. So there was a point of stall here with company A. And if you looked at their growth pattern over the years, they kind of went up and then they kind of plateaued. And then with company B, because they were so new, they kind of went up and then they're still on the growth path, right? Now, what we found though is what happened when we actually started marketing. Well, then that growth path, if you look at the plateau, so it goes up, and then with company A, it really started to take off. With company B, it kind of just sped up the initial same climb. And that's because, in my opinion, company A was sitting on top of a market that had been primed by them already. That market was thirsty for more of that company. Whereas company B, their market still didn't really know that they existed because they hadn't been marketing a lot, right? And there's 2 ways that you can sort of like push yourself into market. You could do the word of mouth train, you can do the slow but steady growth of previous customers giving you more customers. And that's really what company A did with their terrible brand for a long time. And it worked. I can't deny that, right? They got to a point, but eventually they wanted growth, not just a slow, steady incline. They wanted to ramp. Now, because this market had known them for so long, suddenly in their eyes, somebody who was known into the community was now active, was now moving around about, right? They started doing community events. They started doing marketing. They started doing advertising. And we were controlling a portion of that. But it was like the market was just like, yeah, go, you guys go, do your thing. This will be great. Whereas with company B, nobody knew about them. There was no trust into that market, regardless of their brand. And that's actually one of the main reasons why I want to talk about this. A lot of people will spend a lot of money on getting a quality brand, and I do recommend it. But they they have a false expectation of what that means when they start running advertising. You have to remember that with this, we have a timeline issue too. Company B likely would have been farther than company A by a 15-year mark, right? Because they were starting off on such a good foot. And I'll bet you their initial growth was faster than company A. And that's because they had the awesome brand. But just because you have an awesome brand doesn't mean that you're going to accelerate into market like someone who has been serving the same market for years upon years. And so if you're in a market and you're wondering about, like, man, why is it that this company, who isn't very good in my opinion, it just seems to be like getting the lion's share of the calls? Well, a lot of it has to do purely with longevity. And so you don't want to compare yourself directly to another company in the market and expect your growth pattern to be exactly like theirs. And in this case, we use similar strategies and we still have that issue. Like, yes, you can use marketing to sort of like bully your way into a market, but the amount of money it takes to do that and mimic a growth that company A had because they were sitting on, 15 years of goodwill, like, that would be cost prohibitive for them at their revenue scale. Most definitely. You can go in and drop $30,000 into a market for 6 months and go, yeah, look, we spent $180,000 and look at us now, right? That's what we call private equity money. We don't call that, yeah, we're building this small company ourselves money. You've kind of got to think about, when you are looking at your company and your growth, what are your expectations? So if you want help looking at the expectations and looking at your marketing, kind of giving you a little bit of again, behind the curtain, a little bit more discerning view, go to mammothforplumbers.com and schedule a free consult with my crew. They'd be happy to talk to you about what you got going on and helping it sort of show you what the next step forward could be. But in the meantime, I want you to sit down and really, really think about where you're at with your company and what you think the market knows about you. Because there's a huge difference when we get a client between a client that is already known in market and all we have to do is amplify an existing goodwill versus a company that has no goodwill and we have to build it. When we have to build it, I guess a good way to look at this is company A had a foundation. All we did was build a better house on it. Company B, we're building that foundation for them. And so the longer that you're in business, the bigger and stronger the foundation of your company is going to be, and you can build a bigger and bigger company on top of it. So hope this is useful, and we'll see you on the next one.